So, guys, there was a mob enforcer that was like well known when I was a kid. His name was Mario Rainon, and he's like most of these old mobsters, like mostly gotten out of the life. I mean, the Chicago outfit really had its heyday even before I was a kid, like really like the '70s, '80s, and then kind of fell off. Well, I mean, you can technically say that its heyday was all the way back to the early part of the 20th century, but they started to fall off really like in the '90s. And then, by today, it's pretty much all the way fallen off, man. But this guy was one of their, enforcers back in like the late 80s and 90s, I would say. And he is an example, he's a prime example of something that I call gang beef with the feds. And that basically is, when you're organized crime, you're not just one of these street cliques, but when you're actually like an organized crime, it's like the feds are your ops, because you don't really have ops like, street gangs have, but you got to deal with the feds. And once you get into their system, you can get sentences that are a lot tougher than really you should get for the crime that you commit, just based on who you are and the organization that you're a part of. And when it comes to the mob, this is one of the biggest examples of this, man. So he took 15 years for a gun charge, okay? And this was about 10 years ago. But, like I said, most guys nowadays, if you look at what's going on in Cook County, you get picked up with a gun. Like I can say by name off the top of my head, like probably 10 guys at least that have gotten caught with, Glocks with drum mags and switches, okay, like without, any license or anything like that. They have criminal backgrounds and they're like out of there in 6 months, and this guy was found with a gun during a search of his apartment, and 15 years in prison sentence. You see like how exorbitant like type of a sentence that is. This is from the time that happened. This was in September of 2014. It said a suburban Chicago man described by federal prosecutors as an organized crime enforcer was sentenced to 15 years of prison for being a felon in possession of a firearm. See, Mario Rainon of Addison was found guilty of the gun violation in February. The search warrant was issued for his apartment. A search, they said, uncovered a .357 caliber revolver in a bedroom nightstand. It was determined that the gun was stolen in October of 2008, but they never determined that he was the one that stole it. So, like on the street, stolen guns get sold and passed around a million times. So it's one thing to say that he had a gun that had been stolen. It's another thing to say that he was actually the one that stole it. So in sentencing him, the U.S. District Judge told the former mobster that normally a 60-year-old person would be thinking about things other than committing crimes. But again, there's no proof that he didn't have this gun just for personal protection, right? There was no other crime being committed at the time. And before his sentencing, prosecutors detailed his use of violence and threats against those who owed debts to organized crime figures, but that's from back in the day. So the assistant U.S. attorney said that his violent activity should be held against him, arguing for a sentence of up to 24 years. So he wanted to give him 24 years for a gun charge at this point. After the sentencing, Rainon's attorney, Joe Lopez, said that he was happy the judge gave him the lowest possible sentence. Now, he was eventually released early because of COVID, okay? So he's older now, and if he had been younger and healthier, this might not have happened, but when COVID happened, he got compassionate release early, and really, I mean, the sentence itself, like from the start, was bogus for it to be that long. When he was freed, they said, quote, Mario the Arm Rainon, that was his nickname on the streets, the Arm, that was like his street name. They said will be allowed to immediately leave prison after a federal judge granted him compassionate release due to COVID-19 concerns. This is from 2020. The U.S. District Judge reduced Rainon's 15-year prison sentence on a gun charge to time served. So although he's not infected with COVID-19, the court warned Rainon's relatively advanced age and other health problems could lead to major complications if he were to become sick. So he got his nickname the Arm. For, like I said, being an enforcer for the Chicago mob. He was doing time for a 2013 case in which authorities found that revolver as a convicted felon on parole. And in the order, the judge writes that he believes the career criminal likely poses no immediate danger to his community because he is, quote, optimistic that Rainon understands that given his long criminal history and his advancing age, he is likely to spend the rest of his natural life imprisoned if he breaks the law again. So, in other words, if he breaks the law in any way, shape, or form, I mean, if this man forgets to return an overdue library book, he's going to prison possibly for life. I mean, I'm exaggerating there, but I mean, you get my point. So in his motion for release, Rainon's attorney wrote that Rhinone suffers from a long list of health challenges. So here we go: skin cancer, cataracts, liver disease, prostate cancer, heart and breathing problems, asthma, tinnitus, cataracts, and a tortuous aorta in his heart, which can lead to high blood pressure, aortic insufficiency, or premature atherosclerosis. So Rhino's been locked up, they said, at the Federal Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota. So, I mean, if you got health problems, I've been talking about this to people that, are talking to me about my little thing going on. And I'm telling you, man, if you got health problems, like apparently your life in prison is a lot sweeter because, like in the county, they got that medical deck. In federal prison, I don't know. I've never been to federal prison, man. But I mean, if you do have those health problems, like it actually turns out to be a benefit for you. I mean, obviously you don't want the health problems, and it can help you to get released earlier. So that's what they did back in 2020. Now, just recently, about a week ago, he's made another plea to be allowed to leave the Northern District of Illinois. So this is where you're restricted, like if you get busted on a federal charge, in the city of Chicago or like anywhere in the suburbs surrounding here. It's like you can't even go to like the southern part of the state. It's like I forget the exact boundaries of the Northern District of Illinois. I think it goes out to Rockford, but you're really restricted. It's more restrictive than like a state probation case, because if you're on state probation, you can't leave the state of Illinois. But I mean, the state of Illinois is pretty big. The Northern District of Illinois is not that big, so you got to really watch where you're going if you're on something like that, man. And he wants to go back to Italy. Okay, that's where he wants to move. So what they're saying now, they said he spent about half his life behind bars for various Chicago outfit rackets, from violence to extortion. And so they're saying that now he's a, quote, model candidate for full release from his federal sentence in a court filing, asking a federal judge to cut his court supervision short for good behavior. So the mob, I mean, the gang that he was a part of is basically gone, right? So, I mean, this is one of the things with the mobsters, why I personally think they should all be free at this point. Just like Larry Hoover and these other guys. I mean, at least Hoover's gang, he dropped his flag and he's not a part of that anymore, but his gang still exists. Although in Chicago, it doesn't really exist because it's just a bunch of cliques now. Like the organized, crime unit that he left no longer exists, at least not here. Nationally, I don't know. I've heard that in other cities it's different, but the Chicago outfit, that Mario Rhinone and these other guys, and they're locked up and right now doing like life in prison that they left behind, that no longer exists. So, I mean, holding them behind bars, when the whole organization that they were involved in is gone and they have no organization in which to function and commit crime, to me seems like, it's just excessive. But that's just my personal opinion. He's now 68 years old. And they said he's said to have a debilitating back injury from a high-speed rear-end collision that occurred after he was released from federal prison. So they let him out because of COVID, and then he got hit by a car. So that accident apparently, which is now, it's one of the things that's prompting him to ask a federal judge in Chicago for mercy again. So, like I said, he was granted early release from that 15-year sentence because of the COVID-19 outbreak. And he was not put back in prison after the COVID thing died down. But he's claiming that he's an elderly man wishing to terminate his release so that he can travel the world at his leisure during his golden years. So his attorney said that, even though he's debilitated right now because of that accident, after his treatment is over, he might be able to travel, and that's what he wants to do. So how much longer he has to live with these health problems, nobody knows. Next month, he's got another court hearing. And, like I said, man, these guys really, in this day and age, I personally don't see them as a threat. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section if, they should just release all these mobsters, man. But, giving them like these really long prison sentences for some of this stuff, just to me seems like, putting a nail in a coffin that's like, it's not going to open back up anyways because the mob is really dead, So you guys let me know what you think though, man. It's your boy Winnie C. Report. I'm out.